Hey guys. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Remind podcast. I'm Dr. Ash Morland and I'm joined by my hilarious co-host, David Masterton. So, not so hilarious topic today. We are coming down to a really serious topic today on moral injury. And this is inspired actually by one of my team at Remind. She had said to me, oh my gosh, I had a conversation with someone recently and they taught me a new term. I've never heard of this before. And she asked, what is moral injury? And as soon as she asked it, I felt goosebumps in my body and I was like, whoa, this is so important. People don't understand what moral injury is and they need to, because moral injury, especially post-COVID, is something I see a lot. And it's, even if people don't know the language for it, people know when they've felt it. And it feels like a massive onslaught to what is right for you. And yeah, it's a huge violation, let's say, a huge violation, an immoral violation of your truth. So
great episode.
Let's go.
Catch you next week. But you're exactly right. It's this thing where, okay, you feel a calling to go in one direction, to make a decision one way or another. And there has to be a sacrifice that has to be made. Whether that be, say, a sacrifice of a connection, a sacrifice of a perception, a sacrifice of an asset, acceptance, all of this, or it's a sacrifice of self, where it is, I have this thing that I need, I feel so strongly in this position, in this understanding, in this direction, that, okay, I know I need to do that, but I won't because of this. And I feel as though when you're stepping away from that, you're sacrificing something. So in that case, when you're walking away from self or sacrificing self, I see that as a moral injury because you've injured it.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult sometimes to take a stance on a belief that may not be socially acceptable or not socially acceptable yet. So to take that kind of stance, you're sacrificing certainty that you're accepted socially. So it's a very difficult one, because at the end of it, it comes down to how strongly do you believe in yourself? How strongly do you believe in your purpose? Over how strongly do you feel about the limiting beliefs, the fears, the conditioning that has been put upon us since we were born. And then from there, you can kind of decide.
Huge. I sort of see moral injury like, okay, so let's take it back a step. Let's think about what is a moral. A moral is about the principles, the absolute underlying foundational principles of right and wrong. So if something is morally sound, it's in alignment with what we consider to be right. If something is morally not sound, then we would consider that to be wrong. Like at a moral level, most people would agree that it's immoral to murder someone. Now, moral injury is, let's say, for instance, there are people, this is really common in the military, where people, because of their obligation to doing what is right for their country, for their mission, for whatever it might be, have to harm, sometimes kill, sometimes make judgments that go against their inner moral compass. And so they actually have to prioritize their rank or their role or their mission above and beyond their own moral compass. And there's so many circumstances, like even just in my own life, this leads to burnout for a lot of people. This is a huge cause of burnout when they're in roles that challenge their, like where there's a part of them that knows something that they're doing is wrong, and they are forced to keep doing it either because it's part of their role, part of their job, part of a fear that's driving it. It might be as well. So some really common examples that I have seen, even in a previous workplace that I was in, it was like a hierarchical managerial structure. And let's say the bulk of the workforce are down here. Then you've got the direct reports. Then you've got the direct report reports. So like this level, and then you've got the executive level at the top. Now, the people that were at this level underneath the top, they just had to execute what was handed down from them from the top. They just had to execute the orders. Now, in the case for my previous workplace, it was things like workloads that were actually humanly impossible. They were completely ridiculous and not possible for us to do the work in the workload allocation that was given. And things that we were being asked to do or asked to stop doing that were not morally right. And so these managers were forced to do things that they knew were going to harm people that were their team, that they were managing. Now, when you're in a position where you are leading a team, but the constraints in which you have to lead them harms them, that's moral injury. That's an example of moral injury.
Absolutely.
Another one that I see a lot with clients is moral injury when someone is in a relationship and they know that something is happening that's wrong. And I've seen examples of they've been aware that their child's been sexually abused, but they've continued to stay in the relationship. They've been aware that, other things are happening, or just that their relationship is harming their child in some way. And even though they've known that it's wrong, they've continued to allow it to happen because the fear of losing the relationship felt too big. Now that, at a deep spiritual soul level, causes moral injury.
Yeah, well, there's generally only two places this is going to happen outside of military. We'll even include military, work and relationship. It's really, these are the two things that really keep us in a controlled state. One is about our money. The other one is about acceptance with a partner. Like they're the two biggest things you can motivate someone on. Either giving them something or taking it away in those two things. And so
money and power.
Yep. So when you've got this tie to these things, then like the workplace, right? You have the option, because you always have the option. You always have the choice. Go back 4 episodes, something about choice. You have the option as a manager to say, no, enough is enough. However, the consequence of no, enough is enough because of what is happening to the people that I manage is you're not capable of doing the job, get out. Because I'll find someone and I'll pay someone to do this for me. And the funny thing is,
it's going to happen regardless of whether or not you do it, and there's nothing you can do to protect them.
I'm hopeless. I can't do anything about it. I'm just one person, right? Yep, and it's real. It's also very real, right? However,
so real.
It is, at this point, a moral injury. What you've sacrificed is that. And then it'll bubble up every now and again and you will maintain it somehow. And same in relationship. My heart sinks when I hear about people being abused in any way in a relationship, especially on the big ones. But you can die from a bullet in the head or you could die from 1,000 cuts. And I guess when I think about moral injury, yes, you can have the big ones, but it's those 1,000 little ones that get you. Now, it doesn't need to be a terrible relationship, but you could be absolutely miserable on a whole number of different levels. And every time you accept that and you are aware of something better and you choose not to go with that, that's, in this case, a moral injury. And so maybe the more you do
I'm
it...
even thinking back to my childhood.
Well, childhood, the power dynamics...
Morals are...
It's a different power dynamic.
It's happening again.
Oh, is it?
I think about my childhood and go, you know, in our childhood, we are emerging in our understanding of morals and values. We're emerging in our understanding of our feelings around right and wrong. We're experiencing emotions like guilt or regret, and we're learning what those emotions feel like, and hopefully developing a bit of a moral compass as we grow and evolve. And one of the things that, I mean, there's money and power, we spoke about that, but also another big driving force is a desire to fit in. It's the fear of rejection or abandonment that will make people abandon themselves to not experience that rejection and abandonment. And I can even recall times when I was a child, I participated in bullying other children who didn't deserve it. And I felt in myself that what was happening was so wrong, but I participated because I so deeply desired to be accepted by the people that were instigating it, that I went along with it. And that's been something that has been a massive conviction for me in my adult life around not just not actively participating to avoid moral injury, but not sitting by and letting it happen and watching it. So, because there's passively participating as well. Like if I'm sitting around in a group of
100%.
people, you'd be surprised how much this still happens in grown adults when they will sit there and triangulate and try and, you know, develop this acceptance of a bias towards someone. I even had it at a previous job many, many years ago where I think it was like my first or second day there. I got taken out for lunch and someone said, now, this is who we like and this is who we don't like. And I was sitting there going,
Ouch.
Are you for real? Like, now, my desire to be accepted by my peers versus my inner moral compass going, this is actually really wrong. I don't want to participate in that. And I, on that occasion, basically just said, I'm capable of determining for myself who I like and who I don't like. But that was like, it still happens, this sort of stuff where you can be actively or passively allowing something to happen or actively participating in something happening. And when you get that, this doesn't feel right, this feels bad for me, that is moral injury. And you're injuring yourself by choosing to participate in it or choosing to allow it to happen.
Yeah, agreed. The behaviour that you walk past is the behaviour you tolerate. It's a behaviour you accept. Yeah. And it's the same. And you're advocating
for, essentially.
Well, it's the same thing. It's like if you walk past something and you don't like it, and this is in the workplace or in a relationship, but you let it go and you don't do it, you are accepting of it. And people go, but no, I don't accept it. Yeah. Well, what have you done about it? And because if you accept it, well, if you don't do anything about it, you are basically accepting it, unless in that point you're sort of saying something about it. Now, it doesn't mean you need to jump up and down and be an idiot about it, but you can just sort of say, hey, let's do something about this in a calm manner, if you so wish. But again, that behaviour might be coming from a partner who's highly triggered. So you don't want them to blow up in front of the child, or you don't want them to blow up at you. Or that could be coming from a manager or an owner of the business. And then you sort of feel threatened. Oh, well, if I say something, I'm done in this job. I'm never getting that promotion. I won't get that pay rise. And I've got all of these things. So you then, okay, I understand. These are all symptoms both Ash and I have gone through. These are very real. And so, but
100%.
it doesn't discount the fact that at those times that Ash and I were doing it, it was moving away from self. It was a moral injury, because what we decided to sacrifice was, I understand, I know, and I'm aware of better, but I'm not fighting for it. I'm not living it. I'm not embodying it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to, that's it. And take that one step further. You're aware of it, you don't do anything about it, but at some point you believe that you would. And so therefore you never do. That
Isn't
to
it
me is
interesting?
bypassing.
I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with people over the last few years who have essentially said to me that they regretted getting a COVID jab. And this was a real interesting one, because I feel like there was, I don't know how far to go into this, but there was a lot of moral manipulation during COVID. And that effectively, so moral manipulation is a directive and a meaning assigned. So we are led based on what we should believe is right versus wrong. And the right thing to do for your neighbour, for your children, for your sick loved one, the right thing to do is to get the jab, because it's your responsibility to keep everyone else safe. And if you don't do it, then you're going to be the one harming them. Now that was such a big onslaught of moral manipulation. And from the perspective of people with hindsight who can look at data, and I mean, it's pretty well established now that the COVID jab was never about protecting anyone else. It may have reduced your own symptoms, but it was never about, in fact, the data very clearly shows that it increased the likelihood of transmission of COVID.
Gotcha.
But you personally didn't get as sick. Now, when my background was a research scientist. So my husband, as I mentioned previously, has cystic fibrosis. I relied on symptoms of sickness in order to keep my husband safe. And that's true even if we get a common cold. Like if we get a common cold, we kind of need to know that we've got sniffles, because then we keep our distance from him. We get, we turn up our care with washing our hands and all that sort of stuff. If I got the COVID jab and it suppressed my symptoms and I didn't get as sick, I don't know that I have COVID, which means I could kill my husband. Now, that was a moral dilemma for me, because on the one hand, I've got society saying you have to blah, blah, blah. And I've got this inner guide saying, if you do this, then you could be responsible for killing the person that you love. So what I've had many interesting conversations with people post-COVID around their choice or not choice to not get vaccinated. And what I've found is that there is a lot, I mean, I personally couldn't care any less if someone chose, that they have their autonomy of choice. But the moral injury around people who didn't want to get it, but because they were forced and felt like they had no choice because they needed to get it for work, or they needed to get it to be able to see their kids, or they needed to get it for, even medical access, like access to medical support. In many cases, they said, you will not get access to this unless you've been double jabbed. That is moral manipulation, because it meant that that person either had to choose to sacrifice their own life or comply. And in many cases of people that I've spoken with who had complied and got the jab against their own beliefs or their own moral position on it, essentially it's a form of PTSD.
Yeah, well, I think
there's a massive moral injury.
And that would have been just another layer on the whole COVID effect, because it turned life upside down. And for whether you decided to jab or not to jab, there was a big, I suppose, a big push to make sure that you would be doing it because you cared for others. Or it was a fear that if you don't do it, you'll die from COVID. And so I think there's a lot of people that, especially in hindsight, go, I wish I didn't because of whatever reason. But there's also a lot of people who simply did it from being scared. And so at that level, it's still, you know, that's difficult to swallow because, like, I had no choice. Well, you always have a choice. But it's like, what are you sacrificing? Are you sacrificing access to your job? Are you sacrificing, you know, being looked upon as someone who's not conforming or someone who doesn't care? All of those type of things. For me personally, I took the jab, but funnily enough, it wasn't because I was forced into it, but I also knew that when I was taking it, this wasn't for me. It was a really weird situation.
Yeah, interesting.
Because at that point, I hadn't started my sort of real healing journey, but I looked at it and sort of went, I need it because I needed to travel interstate during that time in Australia, and without that, you absolutely no. But it wasn't, I didn't feel forced into it, but also didn't feel as though it was a bit of an interesting dynamic. If I look back, I would definitely say I probably would have looked at it a little bit more carefully. I don't know if I would have changed the thought, because a big part of my spiritual journey is also going into the darker side of the whole spiritual journey. And I definitely believe that the jab was not for the light side of you. It was the dark side. And so I also believe that the light shines brightest in the darkest parts. So I tend to go head into these things. So I knew as taking it, it's not for me, and I'll heal myself afterwards. But this is even before I started getting into any of this. No tattoos, no nothing. In my second marriage, just focused on getting the job done. However, with this awareness, which kind of, I don't know, it was maybe a bit of arrogance on that side. But I still know of people who went for the second, third, fourth, still getting boosters because they're absolutely scared that they still need it. And then you got the other side of people dropping dead from heart attacks, whether they're linked or not. I'm not a doctor, but certainly heart attacks and those type of things have been on the increase. So it's really about, it's not sort of not doing it because you're afraid. It's not doing it because you are afraid. It's about going, feeling my position. And if you don't have that position, or the only thing that really triggers you is fear, then you need to look at that. Because sometimes you can condition yourself into a point where you will only react based on that. As opposed to following your path, you're sort of ping-ponging off fears, trauma, limiting beliefs, etc., etc. And so give yourself time, be curious. I always come back to, and I know last episode I'm saying it, I think we were saying this off air a little while ago. Just be curious. Curious.
Yeah, it's the most important thing, isn't it? And, you know, it comes back to my beautiful friends.
They're back, Harry and Sally.
Because fear only exists here. And it's okay for there to be fear, but if we don't know the essence of who we really are, if we don't know that there's more to us than the flesh meat suit that's experiencing fear, then Harry's the one doing the ping pong thing, just being driven by fear. Now, it makes you extremely vulnerable, because if you are only driven by fear, you know that we hear the word fear mongering, and if you're only driven by fear, you can be very easily manipulated, because all someone's got to do is know your weak spot and know your fears, and guess what? They've got you. But if you deeply know who you are and you're deeply connected to yourself, and you are so deeply connected to yourself that fear is not a good enough reason for you to abandon yourself, whether that's fear of rejection, like the child version of me. I feared being rejected by the friends that I craved acceptance by, so I abandoned my sense of self and I participated in bullying. Like that's ultimately what it comes down to. If I know who I am and I'm confident in who I am, even if it means I will be rejected, it's okay. Even if I have a little bit of fear of being rejected, but the fear's not a good enough reason to drive the bus and make me do it. And so it's that they both coexist. I can have awareness of fear, and that fear is not a good enough reason for me to abandon myself. I might have a fear of being alone, but if I was in an abusive relationship, the fear of being alone, when I truly and deeply, I think this is going back to what we mentioned in that last episode, like we talked about having healthy relationship with self is the antidote. Because if you have healthy relationship with self, there is no fear of rejection, fear of being alone, fear of what people will think of you. There is no fear that will be enough for you to abandon the essence and truth of who you really are. And therefore, that is the greatest weapon against moral injury that I think exists. That's my personal perspective.
100%. 100%. Because as you said, with fear, it can come in so many ways. It's like fear of you might have this happen to you if you do this. Or then there's a fear of missing out, right? You might have enough, but if you don't feel as though you have enough, you'll be driven by that, even if there's nothing being taken away from you. Or what's taken away is
100%.
certainty. It's the acceptance. It's all of that. And so it can work on both sides. So it's doing it while scared. It's not waiting for you not to be scared to do it. It's doing it while scared. And
also it's super helpful to have some tools to be able to process that fear and be able to have safe people around you to hold you through processing that fear. I think that's so powerful.
Yep.
But
absolutely.
As you said, like doing it despite it. And it's reminding me, I had a conversation recently with someone who was saying that they had a staff member who was threatening them and throwing words around like lawyers and all this kind of stuff. Now, again, we can tap in and instill fear in people. And if we instill fear in people, then they're just going to be reacting to that fear. We're more likely to abandon ourselves and give in and give them what they want. We're more likely to abandon ourselves and give in so that they don't hate us. We're more likely to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I think the most exciting thing is when someone can fearmonger us, and you mentioned certainty. When someone can fearmonger us and go, oh, I'm going to get lawyers involved and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Okay, well, if I wasn't acting in fear and I was acting in my empowerment, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and get all the information I possibly can. And I'm going to get everything in order to know exactly where I stand, what leverage they have over me, what power they have over me, so that then I am empowered, because knowledge is power in that case, right? So if then I go and find out that they have no leg to stand on, and this would be my counterclaim, and this is everything that I'm actually so well protected and I'm so safe, guess what? The fear's gone. And you don't then have to abandon yourself and give in to all of their crazy requests and all of that kind of thing, because now you're anchored in certainty, and certainty is an eternal aspect. Uncertainty and fear is a Harry thing. Certainty and safety is a Sally thing.
I might go one step further, because certainty is something that can only be, and this is my thought, certainty can only be given when you can touch, feel, see, smell, taste, right? That's for the human brain, that's certainty.
Yep.
Confidence, right? That deep-seated confidence is almost delusional at points, right? I'm going through a season of delusion.
We've had these
right
conversations
now.
a lot lately.
Right, because guess what?
Yeah.
The brain can't see, taste, touch, feel any of this stuff coming in. So I believe that with Harry, he's seeking certainty. Give me something to push up against. Show me something that I can lift. Show me something that's protecting me. Give me the certainty that I'm right.
Yep.
And then that can be shattered when someone comes in with more certainty. Well, I've got a lawyer and I've got money and I can certainly make your life miserable, whether I'm right or not. Where on the other side, Sally's confident in the fact that she's listening to her intuition and what that person has to say is not for Sally. Sally can see with empathy and compassion, this person's going through something. Sally knows that there's something else triggering this. And then probably at that point, then Sally decides, is this something that we can heal through, or is this something I need to simply let go of and allow it to be in its own space and set a boundary? Because Sally has the confidence to know that even without all of this paperwork, certainty and all of that, that she's on the right path. And at that point, and this is where I kind of see the difference between confidence and certainty. Now, it might be just semantics, right? But I've got to say that, and that's coming from me being in a season of that. You strip away the certainty, what are you then? Because I believe that's the biggest lesson that I would say people are going through, is getting rid of the certainty and digging into the confidence. We'll call it faith. We'll call it hope, belief, all of those things that you can't measure, except delusion. That's what you can call it. I think that's
super important, because that clarity here is certainty in that use of the word is just the duality to uncertainty. It's what our human eyes are seeing and what our human ears are hearing. When I'm talking about Sally level certainty, I'm not talking about the perceived certainty. I'm talking about that inner knowing that I can follow through and do what is right in truth and spiritually right, as in I'm not harming anyone else. I'm like, it's spiritually right, as opposed to, they talk about the knowledge of the good and knowledge, the fruits of the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. That is right or wrong. It's a judgment. Judgment is certainty and uncertainty. It's the duality of our human experience, of our flesh experience. Oh, hey, darkness.
Darkness, my old
Talk
friend.
about dark and light. But the certainty in the context of Sally is spot on. It's an inner knowing. It's a soul level certainty that even if you do what is morally right, and even if you lose everything, you've actually won. And this is a strange concept, because again, it's only Harry that's afraid of losing his house. It's only Harry that's afraid of losing money or losing credibility or losing friends or losing a partner or losing a child or whatever that loss might look like. But Sally knows that loss of anything that's physical is only temporary. It's not real in the eternal life or eternal world. Oh my gosh, you're so red right now.
Yeah, technical problems with the light. This is going to be interesting. Anyway, we'll keep on going.
I think that
games.
It's super important. And again, it comes down to morals, right versus wrong. It's not the judgment side of it, but it's what your soul is showing you as what is morally right.
Agreed.
What's right for you.
And that could be different for everyone. So on that technical note, we'll wrap this episode up nice and early so I can get back to what's going on with my lights. But guys, it's important to really sort of go it's not necessarily about making the right choice based on perception outside, is what sort of Ash is alluding to with Harry. It's about going what feels right for you and following that, whatever that
Feeling
is.
empowered.
Yeah, and going with that.
That's so interesting, actually. As you say that, and I said feeling empowered, because remember we said it right at the start that the biggest threats to morality is money and power, and the positions of money and power will use their money and power to take ours away, and so that's the threat. So to be empowered means self-empowered. It means that you have a power through your own connection to your sense of self and to all that is, that no one else can take that away. No one else can disempower you with threats or fears or those weaponize those wounds against you, because if they can weaponize that against you, they have power. And power, if we then have to be controlled or if we have to abandon ourselves because someone has power over us, that's the moral injury. So thanks for letting me process that out loud, because I'm making sense of this as we talk.
Fantastic. Love it. And for those of you playing along, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Let us know in the comments about things that empower you, maybe some of the moral injuries that you've had. And until then, we will catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.